visas revoked. Details of these latest efforts coming up. Jana.
We saw some snow this morning. We have more on the way late tonight into tomorrow. The details in my first alert forecast.
From the 2024 Station of the Year Merit Award winner, this is Western Mass News on ABC 40.
We're learning more about the federal arrest of a Hadley man who's now back in custody this evening, including why the state wants environmental protection in his house as soon as possible. Welcome to Western Mass News at 4 on this Friday. I'm Chris Pisano. Western Mass News reporter Reagan Locree joins us now live in studio with the latest details. Reagan.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. 43-year-old Jacob Miller is now back in custody, ordered just a day after he was released. Miller was arrested on Tuesday after an FBI raid at his home. During the initial search, agents discovered a box that held 50 rounds of ammunition inside a bedroom's bedside table. However, inside the box, there were only 15 rounds of that ammunition. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, multiple guns were also recovered from a safe in a hallway closet, including the one seen on your screen. Miller was originally released from custody under multiple conditions, one of those to allow the Commonwealth to remove any hazardous materials from his home. However, we've just learned that investigators returned to court Thursday with new evidence, indicating Miller lied to the State Department of Environmental Protection officials about certain chemicals that he moved after he was allowed to go back home to retrieve clothes in his cat, according to a newly filed court record. And according to court documents, Miller lied about having a large amount of toxic mercury. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection told prosecutors they are greatly concerned about potential impacts to public safety. Miller is due back in court for a detention hearing on April 15th. If convicted, Miller faces up to 15 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of up to $250,000. Stick with Western Mass News as we continue to bring you the latest developments. Reporting live in studio, Reagan Locree for Western Mass News.
Reagan, thank you for that live